Hi, Satnam, it's me, Shakti Sundari. Just feeling called to make this video right now on the topic of from Maiden to Crone. So really this is a little video for women, although men, you're very welcome to enjoy this too. It might give you some information that will be useful, who knows. But really I'm speaking to you women. I'm speaking to you about your journey as a woman who bleeds, who cycles, who spirals, who feels, who connects to earth, who evolves, who grows, who awakens, and who is innately connected to the goddess and to Mother Earth. So I've got a question for you. Do you remember the first time that you bled? Do you remember when your period started? Do you remember when you first menstruated? And do you remember what happened and what it was like and what you felt at the time? I remember how it was for me, one particular part of it anyway. I remember that I was about 11 and I was sitting in the kitchen at breakfast talking to my dad, and I remember I had yellow pajamas on. And I really hate the colour yellow now, but anyway, I had yellow pajamas on, and I remember like sitting with my leg kind of cocked right up, so my legs were spread very wide apart. And then I went up to the bathroom upstairs at a certain point and pulled my pants down to go to the loo, and they were full of blood, and I was like, oh, my period started. It wasn't a shock, it wasn't a surprise, it wasn't a horror, it was just like, oh, my period started. I had been prepared for this for quite some time because I had developed physically very early. So I had developed pubic hair and armpit hair from probably about 8 or 9 onwards. So my mum was constantly giving me these really old-fashioned pads with the strings and the loops attached. And telling me what was going to happen at a certain point, not in great detail, but just sort of saying, you know, take these with you in case your period starts. And it was like, ooh, but it never did, luckily, start while I was still at junior school. I just started secondary school when I began to bleed. So that was my first menstruation. I never really thought about it as being significant, actually, that my dad was present, and he didn't say anything. Knowing him, to be honest, he might not even have noticed. But yeah, he never said anything, and my mum never said anything. And I think I probably went to my sister. I have an older sister, and she helped me out. And that's all that I can remember, really, apart from the next phase, which was when I wanted to use tampons. That I got my sister to help me with that too, because I certainly wasn't going to go to my mother about that. So that's my memory. I wonder what your memory is of your first bleed. When I've sat in circles, so I've held space for women in moon lodges, red tents, and other forms of sacred circle and women's work, usually the stories that I hear are sad, are surprising, are shocking. There are very few stories that I've heard of a joyful coming of age, actually, and of a beautiful first bleed. I've heard so many stories of a time where there was shame, where there was disgust, where there was embarrassment, where there was no information, and even now in the younger generation, which really shocks me, because I thought things would have changed by now for the younger generation. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have so much. At least in the circles where I've sat and held space. So yeah, why am I asking you this? Because it's really important in terms of how you go on to be as a woman in connection with your body, with your physicality, with your womb, with your menstrual cycle, and with your sexuality, because these are all connected, they are not separate. How you feel about your monthly bleed connects intimately with how you feel about yourself as a woman, with your sexuality and your body. They are not separate. So if there's any thoughts around that may be shameful or negative or whatever, it's going to affect all of that in your life. And then when any part of that, like your sexuality, is impacted, it's going to affect your whole life. The other reason this is an important gateway is that we are right at that crux of stepping into womanhood, and as the womb gate opens, we have the potential to blossom into our potential as women and into our power as women. And what is going on around us at that time will make a huge impact on how we feel about that, whether we are supported, whether we are empowered, whether we are held in love, whether we have a role model in our mother or the other women around us, whether there is a sisterhood, whether we see women loving their bodies and their hair and their breasts and their yonis and their wombs or not, whether menstruation is seen as a curse and as a pain in the arse or something to be honoured and acknowledged and listened to. All of this will make an impact on how we go on to be as women for the rest of our lives, actually. And then, you know, we live our lives, and what happened then will be with us for the rest of our adult lives, for the rest of our bleeding times. And maybe there are things that we will brush under the carpet, that we will suppress, that we will repress, that we will ignore, you know, but they will show themselves from time to time, as in when we're with a partner and making love, as in if we want to conceive, as in when we have a termination, when we have a miscarriage, when our periods are erratic, when we have period pain, when we have premenstrual tension. All of these things will be connected to what happened at that first bleed and how we are listening to our bodies and connected to ourselves as women. So then we go through our lives, right, and every month we have an opportunity to connect with our wisdom. Every month we have an opportunity to connect with our intuition. Every month we have an opportunity to go deep inside and release. You know, we release blood, but we release what has happened that month with that blood. Every month we are more and more connected to the cycles and the seasons, the flow of the moon, etc. Okay? Then we get to, you know, after cycling for ever so many years, or maybe not, you know, maybe we don't cycle. I didn't bleed for most of my 20s because I had polycystic ovary syndrome and did a lot of exercise and tried to ridiculously, because I was a beautiful, athletic, slender, toned person, but there was this dieting craze that took off in the sixth form, and I joined the dieting craze and lost a little bit too much weight. Like, I wasn't anorexic, but I lost too much weight really, and my bleeding stopped for a while. So I didn't have regular periods actually until I had my children in my late 30s. So there you go. Now I'm 53 and I've been bleeding regularly until very recently. I haven't had a period now for 3 months, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm in the menopausal time. Now, officially you're not menopausal until you haven't bled for a year, but who cares? Obviously I've been in peri-menopause for some time. So there's been some changes going on in terms of, I think the last 5 years I would say my PMT was a bit worse. So I would feel much more emotional around the moon time and my moon time, like in a really more powerful way. And I felt very tired sometimes, like really exhausted sometimes. I've not really had hot flushes. I've not really had vaginal dryness, which are all the things that people tell you about. My libido hasn't really dropped. My love life, sex life has been totally active until I finished with my last partner, but to be honest, he couldn't keep up with me. I always find that I need a younger lover who's got the energy to keep up with me in bed. So none of that has been affected so far. Now, so I'm coming into my cronehood, and I've noticed as I interact with women once again around me that there seems to be something in the culture around us that is this fear of aging, or is this fear of looking how you really look, or not wanting to go there. And I don't quite understand it, and I feel strongly about encouraging women to embrace wherever you are at in your life cycle and not to be afraid of who and what you are, which is beautiful and divine at every stage of your life. You know, you have the potential to be radiant, to be divine, to be vital, however old you are. And it doesn't really matter how many wrinkles you have, or how many rolls of fat you have, or how many grey hairs you have. You know, we are the divine feminine at all ages. And when we come into the Crone years, it's a time for another opportunity to step in even more fully into our power and into our strength and into our wisdom and into our intuition. Yeah, like even more so. So it's an exciting time of transition and change. I know culturally it's not perceived that way, but that's how I perceive it. And I want to tell you a little bit about a workshop that I went to last year with Deanna Lamb, who is a womb visionary, an incredible woman. And she has this motto, which is suffering is optional. It's not compulsory. So PMT and a terrible menopause, you don't have to suffer. It's all about how you are with your body, how you are with your bleed, how you are with your cycle, how you honor yourself or not. It's all about that. It's all about that relationship. And she has counseled many women who've had terrible symptoms at different life stages with their cycle, and those symptoms have pretty much eased off through working with them. So, you know, it's living proof. And also the fact that in cultures, other cultures, particularly indigenous cultures, the words menopause doesn't even exist. The word PMT doesn't even exist. It's a bit of a Western phenomenon. And I think perhaps, you know, this might be a bit contentious because we have masculinized ourselves so much that we've cut off from being in connection to our bodies, our wombs and our flow. And of course that sets up such an incredible stress and antagonism within ourselves. So we're coming in, or I'm coming into my cronehood. And last year I was sitting in this workshop with Deanna Lamb, which was all about perimenopause and menopause, because I thought I want to get the information now so that I'm prepared for what is going to happen. As it turns out, I think what was going to happen has already happened, and it wasn't really that bad. But who knows? And here's the thing. We talked about our first bleed and we shared our experiences. And she dropped this kernel into my awareness, which has stayed with me since, and which was an amazing revelation. And this revelation is what happened at that time of your first bleed and the context for it and everything that occurred. If you have not embraced and integrated that, it will resurface at the time of perimenopause and menopause for you to see and acknowledge and integrate once again. So you have another opportunity to claim your gifts, to step into your power, to blossom into who you're really meant to be. And you know, those, well, we're not going to say wasted opportunities, but those opportunities that you didn't take first time around, or that you didn't feel empowered to, you have this second chance. Of course you had that chance all the way along your cycling. Of course you do, you absolutely do. But menopause and perimenopause will bring it right up into your face in a stronger way, you know, in an unavoidable way. And so what I had an aha moment around was that in that very moment I was in an abusive relationship with a man who was reminding me very much of my father and of all that is wrong with the patriarchal system. Ultimately, I felt like I was interacting with patriarchy. I felt like, you know, every time I expressed an emotion, he would become angry. Every time I asked for a need to be met, he would become abusive. Every time I voiced an opinion, he would shout me down and take it personally. So that's what I was interacting with. And sort of one day I was like, this is just like interacting with the worst aspects of patriarchy. And what does that remind me of? This reminds me of my father and how he used to be when I was a teenager, when I was blossoming into my intellectual rigor, into my having my own opinions. When I would voice my own opinion, my father would slap me or shout at me. So any disagreement, he couldn't handle it. So here I was with a man who was reminding me of all those things, and I was like, aha, I'm being given an opportunity to... Oh, I think the video just got interrupted for a second because my phone rang. So an opportunity to deal with things differently. That relationship, I ended it not long after, and ever since I've been embracing this transition time as an opportunity for my empowerment, and it really is that. So the reason I'm making this video is ultimately to share this with you, and then talk about, I'm going to be offering a workshop on this theme at the Awaken the Goddess Festival, which is happening at the end of July here in London. It's on the 28th of July on a Saturday. My workshop's 11 to 12:30, and we're going to be diving into this material a little bit more. It's going to be amazing, it's going to be powerful. I can talk at more length, but I'm not going to be talking, it's going to be an experiential workshop. So if this touches you, if you're hearing something here where you're thinking, aha, this is for me, please come. Awaken the Goddess. The entrance ticket to the whole day is really cheap. It's about £12 or something, and the workshop's free if you have that ticket, so it's incredible value. And also, if this is something that is touching you and you want to work more deeply with me, then message me, put a comment below, because this is the kind of thing that I coach and counsel women around. From Maiden to Crone, claiming your power, claiming your divinity, blossoming into who you are really meant to be at any life stage. So that's it. That's my message for today. So lovely to see people watching. I'm really sorry, because when I go into the zone, I kind of don't read the comments. But if you have any questions, please post them below and I will respond. And thank you so much for being with me. Much love, ladies and gents. Sat Nam. Bye.